And now on the line is Suzanne Connolly, the CEO of Barnardos Ireland. Suzanne, welcome to the programme.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, Suzanne, this is my first interview with you and Barnardos since you became the CEO and Fergus Finlay and June Tinsley left. I've never met Fergus, but I did a few interviews with June Tinsley. I understand that you worked with Barnardos for many years before you became the CEO. Could you start off by telling me a bit about how you are getting on as CEO of Barnardos, and a bit about your work history in general with them?
Sure, yeah, I'd be very happy to. I've actually been in Barnardos, can you believe it now, it'll be 19 years in September. It's a long time. And my role before becoming the CEO was I was the Director of Children's Services, so I was very much about what services do Barnardos provide, what do children and families need, and how do we make sure they're the best services they can be. So that was my big job, if you like. And I didn't have very much contact with the media or, with other organisations outside of Barnardos. I was very, very internally focused. And I then went for the CEO job because there was things that I wanted to do that I felt needed public support, and I wanted to start engaging with the government and with politicians, because what I really feel passionately about is that vulnerable children and families really deserve services that help them, and that we understand that some of us are luckier than others. Like, some of us are lucky in the sense that we are born into families where there aren't that many problems, things are going well, there isn't that much stress and strains, and some of us aren't. Some of us are born into families with a lot going on. Maybe our mum and dad, one of them has an addiction, maybe there's very little money, maybe, there's children with particular needs, and those families and those children deserve support, and that's what I want to be talking about as CEO in Barnardos.
And are you enjoying your job as CEO?
I am actually. I really am, and it's very, very different, and I'm really enjoying meeting the public. I get to meet people who support Barnardos so generously by giving us money. I get to meet the media, and that's really new for me as well, and to understand how the media works, and to recognise how we need to really help the public be informed, to really being as clear as we can when we're talking to the public through things like your radio show. So that's all new to me, and I really do enjoy that. And I love then getting feedback from the public as well about what interests them and what they think about the work that we do.
Okay, that's great. We'll move on to talk about the general election.
Yeah.
What are you and Barnardos calling on the parties and politicians to commit to in the next programme for government?
Well, what we really, really want the parties to commit to is that they would invest in family support, which means particularly family support in the community, and that's giving any organisation that works in the community the resources they need to provide services to vulnerable children and families, so children have choices and parents get support. So one of the things that you'll be aware of, and your listeners will be aware of, is there's been a lot of coverage in the media about violence and community violence and young people involved in addiction. And in Barnardos, we believe that investing in the family, supporting parents, giving children different choices, ensuring children stay at school, that will stop children getting involved in a life of crime. So we think that the government needs to invest in services which support children and families in the communities. That's our first big ask. Our second big ask is about education, because we think that if you support education, support children staying in school, and reduce the stress on parents in relation to some of school costs, that you make a big difference to children's and young people's life chances, because that's known. So, for example, if people stay in school, do well enough in school, find a job that works for them, they're less likely to live in poverty, and they're also given a chance to really contribute and to be happy in their lives. So that's why we think investment, particularly in early years and also in primary education, that's our big issue, to make primary education genuinely free for all children, because you probably know that we do a schools cost survey every year, and parents tell us how burdened they are by costs sending their child. And the third thing then we're really committed to is that there's state services like the health services, mental health services, things like speech therapy, speech therapy services for children with disabilities, that they need to be properly resourced. So we need to have an equitable system, because the reality is that some people can afford to pay for private services for children. Some people can't, and we just think that there needs to be an equitable system and it needs to work well. And we're also quite concerned about mental health, children, young people's mental health, and what we want is a really properly resourced mental health service, which takes a family approach.
I saw an article by Fintan O'Toole a week or two ago. He was talking about I think he said North Dublin, the waiting list in the public health system for speech and language services is like just over 1,000 kids on the waiting list, and then other parts of Dublin there are none or very few. Did you see that? Yeah.
I did. And what that shows really is how unfair it is. And the thing is, the government knows where there's particular need. So it knows in North Dublin there's more that is thousands, like that is crazy. So what the government needs to do is they need to put the resources there. They need to put the resources where the need is. And because it's not fair that children are more advantaged if they live in one area rather than the other. I mean, that in Ireland we've enough money in this country for that not to be the case. We need to prioritise children getting the services when they need them, because we know that if you don't do that, that children's development is even more impaired. So you need to give those services as early as possible. And any of your listeners who have children will know that. A child needs to be diagnosed. If a child does have developmental delay, they need to have the diagnosis as soon as possible and the right services as soon as possible. So that child can do as well as they can then in relation to getting their needs met.
Over the last year or two, there has been some good news from the government or the departments of social protection, education, hasn't there? Like, I know that school meals and free school books are being rolled out, aren't they? Well,
actually, and funny you should say that. Yes, they are. In terms of, we're delighted that there's been a pilot. €1 million has been put in to do a pilot school rental scheme, and we think that's really important that pilot is evaluated and then that's rolled out if it's seen to be effective. And sorry, actually, I made a slight error there. It's not that the pilot is for school meals. We know that so that's what we need to be doing. We need to ensure that if that pilot works, it is rolled out. But the other thing that has been invested, there's been €1 million put in for school books, and we really do welcome that. But there needs to be more money put in for free school books for children, because again, that reduces the cost for parents, which is our overall aim. Because I don't know whether it's happened to you yourself, but like when I was in school, I mean, I remember voluntary contributions, and I remember my parents couldn't afford it, and I remember the embarrassment as a child, and the school would keep asking you for it, and there were certain things we couldn't do because we didn't have the money, and that shouldn't be the case in Ireland today. So children should be able to engage in all the activities that other children can do. They shouldn't be discriminated against because their parents have less money.
I have a big interest in that free education, because like it doesn't, from the government side of view, it doesn't cost a huge amount of money for there to be free school books and not have to make voluntary contributions. We're only talking, I think, about a few million, and it makes such a huge difference to so many families,
Exactly, I completely agree. Yeah, but I would say to your listeners, hopefully that if politicians are knocking on the door, they say that to them, because education hasn't featured so far in the debates at all. Not that I've heard, anyway. But things like crime have. And what I'd be saying to the TDs and knocking on the door is that one way to ensure that children don't get involved in crime and young people is have them stay at school and have different ambitions for themselves. And make it as easy as possible for children to be in school, stay in school, and do well.
I don't know if you know much about this. Recently, I know it was during the election now, so I don't know what the story about it is, but there was a new strategy for social inclusion launched. Do you know much about that? I
haven't read it, and I have to admit in detail, but I do think that social inclusion is really important in terms of our communities, because what we want to avoid in Ireland any of what's happened in the UK, the level of hate that's happening. Is that what you're thinking about? You're thinking about different... I
was thinking about just people like who are isolated or whatever, being...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Go on, yeah.
No, it's funny you should say that, because I think that's an area that we all do need to give attention. There's nothing worse than being lonely. And feeling that you haven't got a role in society, or you're not giving it an opportunity to contribute. One of the things we're very lucky about in Barnardos is we have volunteers who really do support our work. And I think that all of us in society that we want to give as well as receive, don't we?
Hmm.
And I think if we have opportunities to do that, it makes a real difference. And I suppose one of the things we'd be saying is that we all do need people, don't we, in our lives? I mean, that's the problem with the amount of time we spend on screen. Is we might have less time doing in face to face as opposed to looking at our device.
And speaking of helping people, you do backpacks every year, don't you, to fundraise for Barnardos?
Yeah, we do. We did. We do some of that, and we and sometimes people in the community on their own initiative, they do something for us, and we're always delighted with that. And we have had a national collection day. And it was Dell, it was the company Dell Technologies who supported that because sometimes it can be quite difficult to get volunteers out, so their staff volunteered, which was great. And the other thing we have is sometimes, we have things on Facebook where we might have a challenge, like we had in November we had a step challenge, which really helped us in terms of what the money people raised, but also there was a sense of fun for the people who engaged. They involved their family and friends, and people encouraged them on Facebook. So when you talk about inclusion, social inclusion, it's great then when we can also do something that's fun for us and also is giving to other people. And we're so grateful for all the people who fundraise for Barnardos and give to Barnardos.
All right, cool. Okay, Suzanne, to come towards the end of the interview, is there anything else you want to let our listeners know about as regards to general election or Barnardos in general over the next few months?
Yeah, no, well, first of all, I'd just say thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you. I really appreciate it. It was great. I would say that there's just ask your politicians specific questions, really, and about what support are they giving to families, and what support are they giving to, particularly to what we would call vulnerable children and families, so people who really do need that extra bit of help. And the other thing is I'd encourage your listeners to have a look at our website as well, because if you are a parent, there's plenty of little bits of advice and information that you might find useful. As a parent, in terms of, they're like things like bullying, bereavement, there's guides on, and they're all free. And also, if any of your listeners are going through a separation, there's some tips in relation to that. And also, we've got tips as well if any of your listeners are looking for a childcare facility for their children. What should they be thinking about when they are trying to select one?